You know what sound that is, folks. You bet. That's another ElkWorks Noon Whistle. I'm Chris Trottier.
And I'm John Anzalone, and with us today is Elkhorn High School Athletic Director John Handel. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to jump right in. We're going right to it, John. Maybe start out, maybe let people know kind of what were some of the successes or new things going on in Elkhorn athletics finishing out that 23 school year.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to, we had a lot of great successes last year, and obviously we're gauging our success by more than just the scoreboard, and I don't want to forget anybody. So I'll mention that we had over 50 kids that qualified for state. If you include the activities portion of it, it's more like 150. Two scholar athletes, and Ray Beelman and Ella Storley, who I know you guys met on an earlier noon whistle. Southern Lakes Conference championships in 4 sports this year: girls tennis, boys soccer, gymnastics, and softball. We had 14 first team all Southern Lakes kids, 14 second team, 20 honorable mention, 2 state champ, Parker Christensen in girls tennis in Division I. Jessica Haggerty, one of our power lifters, was a national champion. Esports team won a state championship as well. We also had 3 players of the year, Parker Christensen in girls tennis, Gabby Dixon in gymnastics, and Lauren Trottier, who you guys know, in softball. And then we had teams advance to state in girls tennis, cheer, gymnastics, and esports. So, pretty healthy amount of success. Do we want more? Sure. But obviously, it's pretty cool to have a chance to go back and talk a little bit about all the successes from this past year.
Yeah, well, I think you're missing some, John. And I think, Chris and I see it firsthand because we work together with you and work, in the schools. But I think you've had some pretty good successes with coaching and that philosophy of being transformational instead of transactional. Mm-hmm. And some other things you've implemented with coaches and buy-in and, kind of a system, like you've created systems that have helped like the overall health of athletics.
Yeah, thanks. We're happy to be involved in year 2 of Champions 101. I know that you guys had Travis on a couple weeks ago, and we did share some of his information at our parent meeting last Tuesday. The whole idea is a place for information and self-reflection for athletes, coaches, and parents. I certainly hope that in year 2 of that we have more involvement from all of those ends of it. I think in the first year, it was more kids and coaches, and parents were probably third. But I think that we'll start to see a spike up in that. And as you had mentioned on that noon whistle before, that it is really very reflective. We're also, as I have my hashtag on there, elkhornelks.com. So we have a new website that just got started on July 1st. So one-stop shopping for everybody. So I'm hoping that place gets a lot of hits. We'll have everything on there, a YouTube channel, all of our schedules and calendars and things like that. We'll continue on into another year of our student leader meetings, which have gone really well. And I'd invite any community member who wants to sit in on those to come in and see what that's like. Super excited about the next year and the process that we went through with those kids. We're also entering into a morning lifting program this year with ETS Performance out of Lake Geneva, where any kids have the ability to come in and work out 3 times a week with a certified public trainer. We kept it reasonably priced for those kids. That starts right after school starts. So a great big push for all of that stuff. So, and then from a coaching end, in our coaches culture meetings, we're going to really focus in on the meat and potatoes of relationships and growth. So as a kid, can I have a meaningful relationship with my coach? Can I create some memories? And then can I get a little bit better? That's really all I think most kids want. And you think back to all the great coaches. I know, John, your dad was a coach, and Chris mentions his coaches quite often, as do I. That relationship piece and getting me better were the reasons that we stuck by those people for so long, and they probably believed in us as well. So really focusing on relationships and growth and creating memories is going to be kind of a big emphasis. Not that it wasn't in other years, but even bigger emphasis this year. So,
did you guys see the shout out from a former Elkhorn employee, Tara Serwinski, current principal at Milton Middle School? Thanks for being on, Tara.
Well, from her comment, I see she's still wise as ever.
She is. Yeah,
I think she wants to get on the show.
She'd be a good guest, wouldn't she?
She would be.
She even gave us a little happy, I think. Hey, so John, let's dig into those coaches' culture meetings a little bit. So you talk about obviously fostering those relationships, and just listening to you talk, it's obvious that's one of the goals of them, is to create these great sustainable relationships like you have with Coach Stells and I have with Coach Regal, and John, you have with your coaches. Besides that, what are some other things that on a month-to-month basis, when you invite coaches, and if anybody wants to see who's in attendance, take a look at the Twitter account, because you always take good photos of those. Give me a little, besides the relationship piece, not that we're diminishing that, what else are you looking to accomplish there?
We really do talk about and wrap ourselves around our core covenant or core values, which are the 6 C's. So compete, commit, contribute, care, connect, and then champions. And we talk about ways in which to promote those things. As a parent, these are the types of kids we want in our programs. I think that all of our coaches, and we're working on our why statements a lot this year as we talk about more and more about transformational coaches. Do you as a coach have an example of a kid who fits into any of these 6 C's? So if you ask me about a kid that, hey, how'd they contribute? I would tell stories about kids I had that demonstrated teamwork, team over self, service, leadership, those types of things. I know from my years of coaching here, I certainly have all kinds of examples of kids who fit those core values. And then once again, as I had mentioned before, this all leads to creating memories, having meaningful relationships with coaches, and trying to get them better. Because I really think that's where it's at. And I think drilling down into those core values has been kind of fun. So I do pick up a lot of stuff. I really do kind of see myself as kind of a coach of coaches. And I enjoy that part of this job very much. And I think as we try to get better at it and try to streamline it and try to speak a more common language amongst all of our coaches, that you'll continue to see our programs go even more and more. So these, for most of our coaches, I believe these core values really should drive their day-to-day work, and their why statements, like, why do you coach? What's it feel like to be coached by you? Those types of things should be part of this before. And we all have those memories of coaches that we have that were more transactional in nature and how they made us feel by being coached by them. And some of us still may have hard feelings from years and years ago about those things. But I think all those are really important to think about, like, why do I coach? Why the way I coach? When I coached, if I were to coach again, I wouldn't coach the way I coached back then, but that's what I knew at that time. So we spend a lot of time on mission and vision, and then going back to our core values. So I'm glad you guys brought that up. And I do want us to, this is way, way, way more than just the on the court stuff for us. It's way beyond the scoreboard.
So John, when you kind of take what you're doing is, what you're mentioning is pretty high level stuff, right? I mean, we're talking really building this true culture, investing in the coaches, really getting to the root, but that's work. That's real work and long term. And you talked a little bit about bringing in a strength and conditioning. Can you give, like, people who are viewing, we got a fellow Rotarian who just jumped on, John Henderson, who said, nice to see student success. But we thank John for always being a loyal viewer, and he's also going to be on pretty soon.
He is next week.
But let's give the why behind contracting with a strength and conditioning. What do you see?
Well, as I think any good leader does, they come in and evaluate systems and processes and those things. And I think the biggest gap in our programming that we may have offered here might have been a morning where we have not filled it. And there's all kinds of kids looking to get in the mornings and get those lift-ins and things like that. I spent 3 or 4 months researching this and giving this a lot of thought. It was very loud and clear in our coaches culture meetings that coaches were looking for something a little bit different, especially in their mornings. That has nothing to do and won't change any of our after school stuff. This is an additional thing that we've just decided to add on. So had heard from a bunch of schools who had contracted with ETS and all the great things that they had got for their student athletes, operating from that equity of access lens and making it affordable for all kids. We came to the conclusion that the best way to do it was to bring in somebody to do some morning stuff with our kids. So that's going to start right after school starts, and hopefully it's well attended. I think it's going to take a little while to grow, but with our coaches backing and the community backing, I think it's going to be something that could be potentially game changing for our athletics programs.
Yeah, I think so too. And, stepping back, John, when you're talking about reflection and relationships and those types of things with coaches, I think another one, and I'd like to know how you and Chris feel about this, is it's looking at yourself and going, would I want to be coached by me the way I'm coaching now? And
agreed. I know Chris is a big E+R is O guy. So am I. Coaches that don't end up staying in it very long struggle with the relationship piece. They struggle with the growth piece, or they struggle with their response piece. And those are the ones that we spend a lot of time talking about, because those are the ones where people oftentimes get tripped up. We are in an era where a lot of people just choose to not coach for very long periods of time. We've been really blessed in Elkhorn with an awesome bunch of coaches who've really tried to perfect their craft and get a whole lot better at it. We're really blessed, but I think one of the reasons we're blessed is because our kids are very, very coachable and very open to being coached. And I think that you add that along with the parent piece, and I think coaches really want to work here and be involved in our athletics program. But there's always, it's always about getting better. I think that's you hear a lot of people talk about that, just get 1% better every day. The more we get kids and people to think that way, and the more we begin to empower kids, I think that rather than manage them, I think that that's, kind of the core of my philosophy moving forward. And I've learned an awful lot in this job in a couple of years, and obviously have still a lot to learn, but that part's been fun. Trying to build a culture of a whole athletic program is certainly way different than trying to build it for just an individual sport. But a lot of good people have sat in this chair before me and have done a wonderful job with that as well. So,
John, let's drill a little bit into that E+R equals O. And
I don't know if everybody knows what that is. You guys should explain it.
Yeah, I was just about to tell you.
I want to talk.
I've been talking too much.
Well, we got a comment card on guests. We'll give you your feedback later on.
Just like on the radio, I talk too much.
Yeah, right.
Really?
Well, you're just not used to being around such intelligent, bright minds. Sports Jam, you had cools, and then, we'll leave it there. Twin Thieves. If anybody is looking for a great leadership book or a coaching book, it's a short read. It's written by Steve Jones, and in that book, he tells a story through some of his personal challenges. He was the head coach at Kimberly, who went undefeated for numerous years. He's got a co-author that I forget off the top of my head, but in that he talks about E+R equals O, which is event, right, John? Event
plus response.
Plus reaction or response equals outcome. And I think where John's going with this is we see too many coaches is their reaction and response to the event leads to poor outcomes. And especially today with kids who, everybody still thinks it's the Lombardi and Bobby Knight days. And unfortunately our society and our kids have evolved from that. And
it just doesn't work. If you're looking for best practice, yelling at kids isn't working.
Well, the question is has it ever worked?
Nobody's doing that well. Yeah, that other author is Lucas Jaden.
Yeah. Because I think it's interesting.
I would argue if you had anything that's ever gone kind of sideways in your life, I would guess a lot of times it's an R. It just is.
Yeah.
When kids get brought up here on code violations, and thankfully that's not a huge part of the component. Our kids are awesome that way. All you can talk to them through is that you made a mistake. What's your response going to be? And your response is going to determine the outcome. How are you handling this with your coaches? How are you handling it with the other student athletes? As far as how much of it do you want to share with them, that'll determine the outcome.
Well, I was
That's
also
what E+R is always. If I just sat and spent my whole game yelling at the officials the whole time, is that really an appropriate response? And it doesn't impact the outcome in a positive way very much at all. And I know it's hard, and I know a lot of old coaches think like, well, if I don't say something to the officials, the other coach is like winning that battle. I don't think there's much to that.
Well, I think it's interesting, John, because, we started this conversation about influential coaches in our lives. And I was fortunate to play for 2 Hall of Fame coaches. And I don't remember them ever yelling or swearing ever in
their response was appropriate.
Measured.
Yeah.
Right.
People question your response. And there's a lot of people who are very critical of all kinds of things they have when they watch athletics. They're critical of scorekeepers. They're critical of officials. They're critical of kids that play. You know what I mean? There's a lot of criticalness. Why would you as a coach want to add one more thing for everybody to be critical of? And I can remember in some of those games, the hardest ones to coach when I coached were ones where you were supposed to beat the team. They weren't very good. Maybe they're towards the bottom of the conference, and you felt like you had to give them a little extra boost to get them there. Those are the ones where you just didn't feel super good at the end of it. You felt kind of dirty, like that was really a hard push. But this doesn't have anything to do with getting kids out of their comfort zone. I think there's a fair amount of that and should be a fair amount of that. This is about trying to get you better. And part of getting people better is that the response piece. Like, how are you responding to things when they don't go well? Are you just shutting down? Are you listening to other people outside your coach? I mean, I love the blue sky, gray sky analogy of Shaka Smart's. Like, I see the sky as blue, but if you see it as gray, and that's the feedback you're getting from other people, those are the hardest kids to sometimes get to because there's smoke coming out of their ears, as I tell my student athletes all the time, because they're just, who am I listening to when things don't go well? That's usually when E plus R is O. I learned way back when I was a kid and I used to watch AWA wrestling with my father.
Ooh, Greg Gagne.
He taught me to cheer for the bad guys. And what I did was always just kind of watch the game behind the game. And I love that part of being an athletic director. I'm watching stuff that I don't think many people are watching. And I think therein lies the real story. But what I'm really doing, if I'm going to capture it in a nutshell, I'm watching response to events.
Isn't that what you're managing too?
Yep. What's that?
Well, that's just
Isn't that what you're managing too? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. But I think measuring those and measuring your responses to it shouldn't at all impact your creativity and your caringness and relationships. I think the more I'm at the top of this, as far as running it, the clearer it becomes. It's relationship and growth focused. It just is. And it's responding to needs of all those kids. And there's some tough to get to kids in all teams, in all sports, but that's your job and that's what you've been entitled to do. And just go out and do it to the best of your ability. That's all we've really ever asked. And once again, as a parent, is your kid has a relationship, can they get better? That's really about all you can ask.
John, are you ready? Anzalone.
I am ready. I want to throw in one more thing, though. I thought
you were going to jump right into a little trivia.
Well, I'm gonna, but before that, I want to comment on what you and John have been saying, and that it just falls right. The E plus R plus equals O falls right into, like, you need to learn that you manage tasks and you lead people, and just trying to manage people falls into you're saying, that it doesn't work, and it goes to the Shaka Smart theory and all that. That I think we get trapped in sometimes of we think we need to manage everybody.
I have a little piece of paper on my desk that I look at every day that says culture is the people in your room. That came from Brad Stevens. And the other one says empower versus manage. And I think the really good leaders have figured out that empowerment piece. And the best teams you guys ever played on, the best teams I've ever coached were all player led. That's empowering. That's the way it's supposed to be.
All right. Let's roll into mascot trivia. John, I know you're an expert at this, but we're going to see if we can stump you at all. All right.
Yeah.
We'll get you warmed up right away. Kakana.
Galloping Ghost.
All right. We're still on the warm up. Rhinelander.
Hodag.
Washburn.
Castle Gardens.
Melon.
Granite Diggers.
Ooh, nice job on that one. Adams Friendship.
They're the Green Devils.
All right. We're 100% so far. Anago.
Red Robins. Sarah Bosch, a proud alumni.
Clintonville.
Truckers.
Oh, DC Everest.
Evergreens.
DeForest.
Norskis.
Eau Claire Memorial.
Old Abe's.
You got one more, Angelo, before we
That's
shut
it?
down here.
Oh, Horicon.
Marshman.
All right.
Yeah, it's weird because that's not something I'm super proud of. That I know that.
Love it. I love that.
Well, Garrett's proud of you.
I have
Garrett's proud of you.
a unique skill set, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say you're unique. Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right. Hey, let's John, thanks for being on here. We always close with some thank yous. Since we're over time, why don't you give us a quick thank you? We'll go right around the room, and then I'll close, and we'll end this thing.
Okay, I have two real quick. Shout out to the Booster Club for running an unbelievable golf outing last week. The course was packed with people, and lots of people wearing purple and gold, and a real showing of the community and their how they back their athletics. And then a shout out to lacrosse and in our lacrosse community in Elkhorn. We're in the process of hiring a coach, and we're excited about them becoming part of the WIAA family here at the high school. So boys lacrosse being offered in the spring.
Awesome. Mr. Angelo.
I'm going to shout out to our administration, school board, and community in that last night's annual meeting. People were interested. They showed up. They wanted to hear what was going on. And I think that was positive community involvement.
I'm going to shout out to all the office staff and administrative assistants who are working right now in the building, getting our school ready. If you walk into the high school, you can see them taking phone calls. You walk into district office, they're getting kids registered, getting supplies out there and ready. So big shout out to all of them. We got one last comment here. Look at that. John Henderson, Rotary, is a co-sponsor with the Sports Booster Club. So we thank Rotary. And on that note, John Handel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, we'll have another great noon whistle. And let's
John Henderson next week.
John Henderson, a fellow Rotarian. Thanks, John. John, we appreciate you taking the time to join us.
We'll take anybody with the name John.